Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of At the Movies with William Fletcher. As per usual, I am your host, William Fletcher, and I am joined this week by Mr. Harry Jobson, as I so often am on this show.
Yes, I'm back. I'm back again. Shady's back.
For this week's episode, we are going to be looking at the How to Train Your Dragon franchise, because there is a live-action remake coming out this week, which we're all so excited about.
I was just saying how disappointed. I mean, how excited I am.
Because now Dreamworks is starting to follow following Disney's footsteps and make live-action remakes of all their films now. So I am expecting live-action Shrek in a couple years' time, and I hope we don't, because I don't want that. But we might, unfortunately. How to Train Your Dragon. Sort of one of the more beloved DreamWorks franchises.
I often hear conversations about it being sort of the primary, pinnacle of DreamWorks, which I have biases. I love How to Train Your Dragon, and a lot of people that I know think, because I love DreamWorks, and I've expressed this a few times, and I talk to my friends who
we talked about Kung Fu Panda last year,
yes,
so we would have gone into it then last year.
Yeah, and I have a bit of a hot opinion, and that's based after. It's largely based off pre-watching and pre-listening to the or re-watching and sort of
listening
and analyzing DreamWorks films. But there's a certain trilogy of DreamWorks films that I like more than this one. That is a lot of people would disagree. And don't get me wrong, I love How to Train Your Dragon. I really, really do. I think it is phenomenal. But Madagascar, man, I love it. No, this is How to Train Your Dragon is gorgeous. It makes me cry, genuinely. No DreamWorks work has inflicted so much emotional weight. It truly is each film. Well, I'm not going to give away the rating straight away, but it is pinnacle. It is how you sort of tell an adult story through this medium while also appealing to a younger generation with just big, beautiful colors and dragons. Chris Rock is a zebra. It's really funny.
I honestly, when you said trilogy, I thought you were going to say Kung Fu Panda.
No, Kung Fu Panda is really also better. I like both of them more than this. But it's not each is bad. I don't think DreamWorks has put out a bad sort of trilogy. I think if you look at the core three, if you take Shrek as not a trilogy, even though in my head canon it's a trilogy.
Well, they're making a fifth Shrek film. They're going to keep milking Shrek forever, aren't they?
Yeah. But why not? I mean, if you're going to milk something, Shrek's already sort of tainted. At least they're kind of milking How to Train Your Dragon now.
We will get to the live action remake, but if you continue on with what you were saying, sorry.
Yeah, but that doesn't take away from how much I love How to Train Your Dragon as a trilogy and as the individual films, and we'll speak on 1, 2, and 3. But yeah, I feel like the world they build, the very rarely a Viking sort of a topic of large scale children's media. You'll find that because they're brutalistic, that it is usually kept for adults, and I think it works so well. There's obviously a lots of spin-off shows. DreamWorks are known for just milking an IP with TV shows that are considered canon, but you don't need to watch.
I remember my younger sister, she watched through the whatever that How to Train Your Dragon show. Was it Race to the Edge or whatever it was called? I remember she used to watch that.
They've got a couple, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, you just large typing sounds.
I could hear the keyboard. Yeah.
There's Race to the Edge, and then there was also just Riders of Berk.
Yeah, there were different. Yeah,
but I never thought they were done poorly. I think that the shows, and something I commend them for, is being the shows are canon, but you don't need to watch them. See, Marvel and Star Wars do that.
I was just about to say other studios should take that on board. Of like this is just sort of extra content that fleshes out the world, but you don't need it to get this next film. Yeah.
But Disney could never. But to speak more so on the first film, so we come into it. Not. I mean, obviously, it starts with the conflict between the dragons and the people of Berk, which is phenomenally designed. Like, it looks gorgeous and very Icelandic sort of theme and Nordic theme. And the idea that Hiccup's design as a character is quite small and slender, and
he's not the sort of stereotypical like jock. I guess you could say like alpha male, if that's like the correct.
No. Yeah. Well, alpha male in the context of Viking is correct. Like, he isn't.
Yeah,
He
exactly.
isn't a Viking. He really he isn't. He's given that his father's name is literally called Stoic, and his name is Hiccup. He's the human embodiment of a hiccup. Like, he kind of looks like Jay Baruchel. Like, but he's built to be a small, vulnerable, and that's not a dig at Jay Baruchel, but like small, vulnerable, weak boy in a world of strong men and women, and outcasted for this. But he's not outcasted in the sense that he goes and makes friends with the dragons. And he doesn't try to make friends with them because he's outcasted. He makes friends with them because of his inability to kill, which is, I think, ties directly into the character. To have a Night Fury, which is seen as the most powerful dragon, given its size. Obviously, we have dragons like the size of Hollands and stuff eventually. Having like the Michael Jordan of dragons and Hiccup as a character, and like them becoming friends. It's a beautiful moment, and it is a really great moment in the film, and it sort of kicks off. And this is all sort of setting up this How to Train Your Dragon world. And I think when it wraps up at the end of the third film, I think it's really beautiful how that sort of arc goes, where it's like, well, they're not dependent on each other. They just grew from each other. Although there's an argument to be made that Hiccup making Toothless only rideable if Hiccup's on him is a bit of like a kept in captivity moment. The idea that, like, and I saw it in the animated film, and then I saw it in the trailer for the live action film coming up, because the live action film is just the first film. The moment where Hiccup's speaking to Stoic, and he goes, "He's killed hundreds of Vikings, and we killed thousands of them." It seems like they're really milking that for a powerful moment in the live action, whereas in the animated, it's powerful, but it's like, it's more just like an argument. It's not like a huge climactic moment for either character. It's just like, at least in the film, the moment really comes from when he's able to show that these can be trained. And I don't know, I think it's a really, really interesting concept, and being able to explore that through having juxtaposing the fact that it's like, it's also saying, look at all these broody meatheads, but realistically they aren't, because you see later in the film that they all come around to dragons, and they're all like, oh no, this is chill. Like, they're not all just senseless, we need to kill them. I have a bit of a grievance in the second film, not a grievance, a bit of like it felt, and it's almost my only issue in the entire trilogy of films. And I'm not going to get into it now. We'll get into it when we speak in the second film, about Hiccup's ability to not communicate, but like sympathize with the dragons. Really important as a character. I think Stoic coming around is huge, because realistically, yes, it's about, it's about, two unlikely friends changing the world.
I mean, I saw it in the cinema when it came out. I assume you would have seen it then as well?
I saw 2 and 3 in the cinema. I didn't see 1, because I think what year did it come out initially? 2010?
2010,
Yeah, I actually,
yeah.
Yeah, I'm starting to. I think it was between like this or like Despicable Me, and my little brother wanted to go watch Despicable Me, and I was like, oh, nah.
Hmm.
And so we
Um,
watched Despicable Me. Like,
well, the first Despicable Me is not bad though. It's not. It's like fairly
no, it was good. It was. I think it
alright.
was Despicable Me 2, though. I know.
Yeah, we don't talk about the ones that came
No, it was
after.
Despicable Me 2010. But I remember
Yeah,
my
yeah.
mum took us into town, and she's like, "You get to see one or the other," and we did Despicable Me, and it was like, it was good,
Mm.
but like, they're all owned by Illumination now.
I just found on Facebook. I just went through. I don't know, and I found it on my mum's Facebook that I apparently saw it March 29th, 2010. So it would have been relatively soon after it came out. I remember
Yeah,
I was a really big fan of these films, or the first film rather, when I was a kid. And I will say the first one is still quite good. I think the first one is actually a really solid film. I'm not as into the sequels, but we'll get to those
yeah,
in due course. But I think the first one is, for me anyway, I'd say the first one is the best one of the three. I
I
don't know
agree.
if you do agree. Okay.
I find it I don't know. I find it the best when it comes to, because ultimately it is the setup, it is the world builder, but I also find it the most polarizing in terms of sort of the driven narrative and the written narrative throughout the film. When we're looking at
Mhm.
the third one, by far looks the most phenomenal. It's technology has improved enough that the color is just like, and that was the biggest part of it, right? It's the color of How to Train Your Dragon 3 is gorgeous, and it is, but the
Mhm.
story largely leaves something to be desired. The
Mhm.
villain, and we'll get into it, but I really think sort of not even having an overarching, well, How to Train Your Dragon does, but it's not the core conflict. It's the conflict is between the father and son more than anything, and
Mhm.
I think that's when you're going to get the most impactful and the best stories out of, is when you
Mhm.
are telling a story about a father and son, or about a mother and son, mother and daughter, father, husband and wife, but a story about the people rather than about like, I am the Dragon King. I'm better at dragons than you. Like,
Yeah, I get that. I think for me, what Pix well, not fucking hell, not Pixar, DreamWorks. I think because I don't know what sort of the general consensus on How to Train Your Dragon films are, in terms of like what is considered the best one, but sort of in regards to like the Shrek film, I think there is debate between. I think like certain groups of people think the second one's the best Shrek film, and I think other groups seem to think it might be the first one, and then like the fourth one sort of got a bit of a cult following behind it.
yeah, but no one thinks the fourth one. It's got a cult following, but
Yeah,
like realistically, it's the second or the
yeah, but
first, and I think it's the second. But
I think it's sort of more between the first and the second for the Shrek films. I think for like we talked when we talked about Kung Fu Panda, I think we talked about that as well, of like it's sort of between the first and the second film, which is considered the best one, and I would personally say the first one is the best of the Kung Fu Panda
yeah,
films.
I think at the time I think I said it was the second, but I truly am starting to believe it's the first
I
in the
think
terms of Kung Fu
yeah.
Panda.
It
Tai
just sort of
Lung
I
just
guess
as a
yeah, I mean, that bridge fight sequence alone, I think, is better than basically anything in the second film.
oh
Or
no,
I
not the
certainly
bit
would.
where Poe was like doing the cannonball and the yin yang. That's cool.
Uh, that's pretty. That's probably that's. I think probably the best bit in any of the Kung Fu Panda films is when he's in the It's like after he's been attacked and he's got like the bandages on and he's like moving like the water droplets like before, and
Yeah.
then he uses like that's probably the best scene in any of these films. For me, How to Train Your Dragon 1 is the best of the three. I think it's just sort of, well, first of all, the score I think is really great. I think the music for it is really quite lovely actually. It's just got this beautiful like it's just a sweeping score, and it just sort of it makes you feel good. It's that kind of like music that you can just listen to, and it makes you feel good, and really just nice to listen to. In general, I think that this first film does the best sort of with the characters. I think that the characters are probably at their best here in
Yeah,
terms
because
of
it is a character driven.
the first one is. I think the sequels maybe sort of lose a bit of that. I think mm, I think that for me, the characters in this film are kind of the thing I'm least interested in. Like a lot of other DreamWorks films, they're really good at characters. Like in the Shrek films, there's so many great characters in like the Shrek films or the Kung Fu Panda films. But How to Train Your Dragon doesn't really have many characters I'm particularly interested in.
And I don't disagree, and that's not to take away from, and we'll get into the core cast, which is largely star-studded. I mean, when you look at it, looking back in retrospect, in 2010 it was probably seen as a pretty solid cast, but especially looking
Yeah,
back to see what a lot of
I'm just
people
gonna
have gone
quickly
and
get the
done.
cast list up. Yeah.
Jay Baruchel, Jared Butler, America Ferrera, like Jonah Hill, Christian Wiig, Craig Ferguson,
David Tennant is in these films, but I
David
literally
Tennant.
don't think I ever heard David Tennant say like a single
Speak.
line of dialogue here.
Unfortunately,
Kristen,
TJ Miller.
unfortunately, we got McLovin is in there as well. I had no idea McLovin
McLovin.
was in it, but
Yeah, two parts of Superbad are in this film. Two parts of
yeah,
the main cast.
we just needed Michael Cera, and we would have had all three.
And I don't think Michael Cera could have done a good Hiccup.
I think he could have. Yeah, he would have. He's sort of like I don't know, like Jay Baruchel. He does feel like he's sort of in a sort of similar archetype to like Michael Cera or like a Jesse Eisenberg even, where like they all kind of they're
They're
not
not
quite all
the
the
alpha.
same, but you could see like Michael Cera play a Jesse Eisenberg role, or Jesse Eisenberg play a Jay Baruchel role. Like they sort of can be
So, I saw a
they
very
don't yeah
You a
uh,
Pokemon fan at all?
vaguely. I don't mind
Yeah.
Pokemon.
I'm the exact same. I'm vaguely a Pokemon fan, but I did see a very funny meme where it was like Michael Cera, Jesse Eisenberg, then and then Andy Samberg are like all the evolutions of a Pokemon. It's like Michael Cera is like the
That
smallest
is
one, Jesse Eisenberg's the middle, Andy Samberg's like the peak.
that is true. There's a lot of sort of very sort of awkward white guys in the comedy scene
Awkward,
who all sort of
awkward white
yeah,
guys is the perfect way to put it.
and they're all good. I'm a fan of all of them. I don't have an issue with any of them. I think they all work, but they all are kind of vaguely interchangeable,
Typecast.
and they could work in any role. It is interesting that Jay Baruchel is Hiccup, and then he's surrounded by like Scottish, like Scottish people. Like he doesn't
Yeah.
sound anything like them. It's like he doesn't even attempt to do a Scottish
No,
accent, which is interesting. I'll say. I think it's an
I
interesting
think
move.
America Ferrera as well, like looking back, does a phenomenal job. It like and I couldn't imagine Astrid being voiced by anyone else when I think about it. And
Mm,
but when I look at Astrid, I don't imagine America Ferrera because like don't get me wrong, there are actors and who when are doing voice roles do really become that character, and then you go like, oh, I wouldn't even picture America Ferrera being Astrid, even though like when you think of
mm,
her voice, it is so distinct, but because Astrid just it fits the character so well. But like, and this isn't a go at Seth Rogen because I love him,
mm.
but I truly do think that like, when I watch like a film and Seth Rogen's voicing a character, I see Seth Rogen.
Yeah,
When
that's the
Chris
I
Pratt
love
is
the yeah
voicing a
yeah.
character, I see Chris Pratt. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I totally get it. I love Seth Rogen as well, and I think he's great, but he doesn't disappear into a role. Like he's just Seth Rogen in very, which isn't a bad thing. I like Seth Rogen, but he doesn't yet sort of transform and become a character. He is just
And that's because his voice is so polarizing. It's similar with Jack Black when he voices over a character. It's kind of just Jack Black. I think. Sorry, just to add on to it, one more who I think, and again, this isn't negatively like this isn't me speaking negatively on these voice actors, but Patrick Warburton is someone who's so distinctly recognizable when
Oh,
it's his voice, but I love
yeah,
hearing it. I'm like, "Yeah, I love Patrick
yeah,
Warburton." But,
yeah.
like,
No,
you
Patrick
can't not
Warburton's
picture
fantastic.
Patrick
Yeah,
Warburton, and it's because these characters are cast because of their voices, and it's, if anything, again, an ode to America Ferrera and her ability to she it's not as if she changes her voice, but she changes her character, which makes her voice sound different. It's hard to explain, but it's just I think she plays her role incredibly well in this film to the point where it's like I didn't think about it being America Ferrera at all. I don't. When
yeah.
I without looking at that cast, I wouldn't be able to tell you that she was in it.
For the longest time I didn't know it was her in this film either. I thought it was I was genuinely surprised when I looked at the cast list and it said, "Oh, yeah, Ferrera's in this." I was like, "What the?" I was like, "What the fuck?" How did that just? I just didn't know. I guess because when I saw these films, I didn't know who she was. I wasn't aware of who she was as an actor, but she does really you wouldn't be able to tell if you didn't. I don't think you would be able to tell, like, oh yeah, that's America Ferrera in this role. But I think the opening scene of this film is fantastic, where it's just you sort of get thrown into the middle of this fight basically with these dragons, which I think is great. You know, just sort of throwing the audience into the action. I think is that's a good way to start it because it sort of immediately it's just good writing. Basically, it's just immediately establishing these are the characters. You know, this is the story. You know, this is the world these characters live in. You know, it's just
Yeah,
simple economic writing, basically.
yeah, and it's established incredibly quickly, and that's what you're saying. It is. Yeah, it's economic writing, and I think the reason the first film works so well, as we sort of wrap up speaking about it, because yeah, we could give you a synopsis breakdown, but this is really most people have seen it. So well, instead of going scene
Mm,
by scene and what we love, I think having that dialogue just being between a father and a son, and having it be about sort of their conflicts and Stoke's disappointment and Hiccups' constant ability to try to prove himself
mm,
and it leads to really powerful storytelling that a lot of people are going to relate to. And then you get really cool dragons, which I think is a
mm.
bonus. And typically they are beautiful films. You have an incredible.
Mm,
You're going to sell a lot of plushies.
mm,
Um, and I think the first film again plays the relationship between Stoic and Hiccup because that's what it's about. And there is sort of the love story between Astrid and Hiccup, and you've got sort of the Hiccup trying to fit in with the other people his age, and smaller side stories about inadequacy between the teens of Burke. Um, but yeah, I think the most powerful part and the most significant part is between Hiccup and Stoic and that father son
mm.
dynamic that I think is I love it. I love the first one. I really do.
Mhm.
This is a 9 out of 10 for me. I think
Ooh. Mm.
because of its discussion. I think
Yeah.
also the shortcoming, like the I really can't find anything too negative. I think it's paced incredibly well. It looks phenomenal. It
Mm.
deserved a sequel. I don't feel like it. I don't feel like the
Mhm.
sequels that come after it are dragging out something. So I feel like it was sufficient and economical world building, entertaining, which is ultimately the goal, right? You want to keep
Mhm.
kids in seats. You want to keep adults with kids in seats watching. Like you're creating a film. You want it to say something, and you want it to be worth watching. And I think it's both.
Mm.
And what it says, I think, is really powerful about between father and son and relationships that you can go home and reflect on in your own life. So like there's 9 out of 10. Plus it's like cool. Dragons are cool.
I definitely I think the third act really is a great sequence. Gets the really great, sort of emotional beats to
It's
it.
yeah.
And I also just want to quickly mention before we move on, I did Lilo and Stitch on the show. I think, and I talked about how Stitch is just one of the most inherently cute characters in fiction, and I think Toothless
Oh plushable.
is in that same camp. Um,
Oh
I think
plushable, yeah. If the I think that him, them, the minions.
Yeah, like Toothless is just an inherently likable. Like that's just how you make an audience like a character, an animal. You just give them sort of big eyes, and that's just kind of it, really. Like it's not that difficult to endear an audience, and I think he gets a lot of personality for a character that doesn't talk, which I think is impressive, because that's very difficult, but I think they pull it off, and I
Also,
think this is
after your rating is like
I just think it's a very good film, and definitely the best of the trilogy. I'd give it a solid 8 out of 10. I think it's really great, and I think it did
and
need. I think it deserved a sequel. Yeah, I think this is the kind of like some film like dream animated films. You're like, this doesn't need a sequel, but this is one where it's like there is a world to build, because we only see like
yeah.
6 different types of dragons. Like, I get why that you can introduce one.
And this is just as a bit of an add-on.
Mm.
Do your own research is what I will preface this with. But Chris Sanders, the writer and director, co-writer and director of the film, also has done his credits are in Lilo and Stitch. I believe he came up with the character of Stitch in Lilo and Stitch. So when you
Yeah, I
mention
believe.
Stitch,
Yeah, Lilo and
that's
Stitch.
both. He also did the Wild Robot recently.
Oh yeah, Chris Sanders. He voiced Stitch. He did the voice work for Stitch as
Yeah,
well. Of course, I've completely forgot that this guy did Lilo and Stitch as well. A lot of animation is just like it's just the same like few people. Like they sort of a lot of people just cross over. They'll do Pixar, then DreamWorks, then Disney. They'll all be. It makes sense
yeah,
though. Like I mean, you look at like most of the people who work at Pixar started on like The Simpsons and shit. Like Brad Bird did
yeah.
work at Simpsons and everything. So it
He
makes a
he
lot of
also did
sense.
he also did The Croods, which has made a recent resurgence in meme culture with the character of Grug.
But yeah, we move on to the sequel, How to Train Your Dragon 2, which I like,
Yeah,
by the way, that they just call it How to Train Your Dragon 2. There's no like subtitle or anything. I wish more sequels would go back to doing that, of just having the name of the film and then just 2 at the end. Like, I just wish more sequels did that, because yeah, it just makes it just I don't know. Some franchises, they really overdo the titles, and they just like just call it the same thing but add a number at the end. Like
yeah,
it's not hard, guys. But yeah, How to Train Your Dragon 2. I rewatched it today, since I think I saw it at the cinema. I don't think I had seen it since then. So that's like 10 years now since I'd seen it, which is a very long time. I also think that does indicate how much I wasn't that I didn't feel a need to revisit it for 10 years, because
yeah,
I don't get me wrong, it is good. It is not bad. It's just sort of like, as a sequel, it just kind of doesn't do what it needed to do to like
yeah,
be like, oh yeah, this is the story they wanted to do, and this is what they wanted to say with it. It just sort of felt like, I don't know. I feel like there was a lot more potential here for a potentially very good film.
that ties into what I was saying earlier when I mentioned Hiccup's ability to connect with the dragons is undercut by the character of his
Yeah.
mother,
Mhm.
who I think, like, obviously his mother we didn't see in the first film. I think it was
Mhm.
assumed that she had died to a dragon. It would have been more powerful if that was the case, and that because then that gives Stoic a real, true sort of internal conflict when it comes to Hiccup's love for dragons and
Mhm.
knowing that his wife and mother, Hiccup's mother, had died to a dragon.
Mhm.
Bringing her back, her character feels somewhat shallow. I don't disagree with that. I think obviously this film is largely cared so much about because of one specific moment. I think the villain. I don't like having a human villain for these films. I don't think it works. I don't think having human antagonist is what How to Train Your Dragon is about. It's about internal conflicts within Burke, and then a larger overarching, big mega dragon
Yeah,
external factor.
these
And I think when you try to add in intertwine these human and these like personal, weird, external relationship issues, like, or antagonists that come through, and I don't like you, and so like it takes away from what I think makes the first one so great, in the fact that it's not about that, and I don't think that it should be. And I think that's where the third one works sort of well, is that the main antagonist of the third one isn't as influential, whereas in this film is the sole reason as to why Stoic dies, which gets me every time, don't get me wrong, because of just that relationship between him and Hiccup. But it does feel sort of like, yes, it's not Toothless's fault, but like, are you serious? I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I struggle with it. I think the sacrifice is a beautiful moment, but I think it could have been avoided or done differently. I think it's a necessary sacrifice for Hiccup to eventually become the chief. I don't think the way that it was done with the antagonist they used was deserved of the character.
I think, yeah, these films sort of, like, they're kind of lacking in really great villains. I know a lot of people really liked the villain in the third film. It wasn't that in a way, but I think, in general, I think that these DreamWorks, they're quite good at villains a lot of the time. Like, there's some really, really good villains in a lot of DreamWorks films. From the Shrek films to I think Kung Fu Panda works really well with their villains. I think that there's
Because I
some
think,
really good villains in a lot of their other films, but I don't think that there was sort of that How to Train Your Dragon. I don't think needed like a traditional villain. It didn't need like some big bat. In the way that Kung Fu Panda or whatever
yeah,
needed a villain.
no, you're right. Because Kung Fu Panda is about physical conflict.
Mm.
The Kung Fu is a style of fighting and martial art, whereas How to Train Your Dragon, it's about training dragons. Like,
Mm.
I just, and it's not about the it's not about the title, but it's about, and I fully agree. And if you look at Madagascar, for example, and I know that Madagascar is a comedy, the only one that people don't agree is the best one, which is the third one, which is another DreamWorks IP that people either say it's Escape to Africa or it's isn't about human villains. It's not about this. The second one is a little bit, but the conflict really isn't. It's more about sort of internal struggle, and I think that's what works best about DreamWorks, is that they're telling adult stories where you don't have big bad guy. You do, but their impact is so negligible that it's like it hardly serves the plot. But in
Mm.
the second one, the plot revolves around this bad guy's ability, and I think that
Yeah.
this wasn't the direction I would have gone in. I don't think How to Train Your Dragon needs that.
No, because it's not about. It's not the same thing. A film about dragons isn't the same thing. Like, it doesn't need to have a villain in the way that a lot of other films do, and I don't think that's. And I think that's fine. I don't need it to have. It just sort of feels like the film sort of because there is like a villain of sorts, but also not really, because that's not really what the first film is about. It's not about them beating this big that bad guy. It's sort of more of a they need to understand these dragons and sort of understand that they're not evil.
Yeah, I think that's the shortcoming of the second film, is that it's so
Mm.
sort of structured around this villain, and that's what the plot is driven by. That it falls short. I think it doesn't do much to develop really between the relationship between Hiccup and Astrid, which was a lot of the driving, the
Mm.
secondary driving plot of the first film, which build off that.
Yeah.
It doesn't really build off the relationship between Hiccup and Stoic before Stoic dies in a beautiful sacrifice. And again, that is the moment that a lot of people highly regard in this film. But a diamond in the rough, and I don't think it's really the rough. I really don't think that this film is bad. I think it's completely
No,
serviceable.
I
But I
don't
think
dislike this film at all.
it
I
doesn't it
like this
doesn't it
movie.
doesn't it doesn't build on the best parts of the first film, which is what
No.
my argument is.
Yeah, I think a sequel should be building upon what the first film did. I think if you're gonna make a sequel, you need to build upon what came before it. That's just sort of my perspective, is if you're gonna make a sequel for a film, it needs to justify why it exists and to be able to build upon itself, or build upon the series rather. Like, if you're gonna make a sequel, you can't just kind of do the same thing again. It needs to do sort of new things, but this film doesn't really do interesting new things.
Yeah, and I don't think that that's invalid. I think if we're looking at the sort of wrapping up and quickly getting through to the third one, yeah, again, I still think it's great. Like, as part of the
Mm,
trilogy, it works well, but as a standalone film, it's just sort of. And again, it's a sequel, so it's not a standalone film. But in the standalone story that it tells, like in its contained film, it's weaker than it should be. But that's not to say that it's not still great. It's not still a 7 out of 10, because it is. And 7 out of 10 is phenomenal. Not
mm,
phenomenal, but it's a great film. 7.5. I think it does what it does really well. But I just
mm,
think what made the first film so great was its internal story. And I think we only really get that at the end, or towards the end, with Stoic.
mm.
And I think what the best and most beautiful moment is Stoic's best friend. I'm trying to think of the character name.
Gobba, the one
Gobber,
with
Gobber.
the.
Craig Ferguson, Gobber. I think that's what gets me, because it's a story not just about a father and son, but about a best friend, and that was what it should have told. Should have told more of that, and less of this love story between the mum coming back. It should have been about Gobber and Stoic. Maybe even a prequel film. Yeah, 7.5.
I give it a 7. I do like it. I do think it is good. I am not as, yeah. I like it's good, you know, but it definitely is. It could have been a lot better, but yeah. We move on to sort of the final film we're going to talk about this week. How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World, which I did not see at the cinema. I saw it a couple months ago now.
Yeah.
Did you see it when it came out, or?
Yes, I did, because I had some
Uh,
friends that were into it. So,
okay. I think this is probably my least favorite of the three. Not that I think it's like bad or anything. It's just sort of the one that least interests me. Well, first of all, I appreciate that they like actually had a conclusive ending and sort of said like, well, it's, this is an ending, and they actually do end it,
yeah.
like
Which is a
as a
lot more
series.
than a lot of series do, because they want to just be like, well, what if we want to milk it a little bit more?
Yeah, and they, as far as I'm concerned, haven't put a fourth film into production yet. They have kind of done it all now. I don't think there's they can do with this franchise, or I certainly don't think there is.
Aside from prequels or TV series or remaking them into fucking live action, I think but it wraps it up really well. I think the sort of relationship between, and again, I said relation. Do a shot every time I say relationship in this podcast. Between Hiccup and Toothless is really beautiful here. He sets Toothless free ultimately, and
Mm,
Toothless takes that opportunity to be free, but not without remembering him. I think it gives a bit of fan service, being at the end of the film, being able to see like Hiccup and Astrid's kids, and it's cute and it's sweet, and the hidden world, and it's very colorful. And but we've seen the hidden world before. Ice Age did it. It's a worn out concept to me. Not to say that it's poorly done, but it's the hidden world when it comes to dinosaurs or dragon, whatever.
mm,
Moana. I think they do it well here, but they don't do it exceptionally well than any other place does it. I think that it is beautiful, but I think it comes back to, again, overarching villain is just sort of a nothing burger, which I think is important, because this is a
mm,
story about Hiccup and Toothless, and I think it does that really well. I think Astrid just sort of gets pushed to the side as like a go be my
mm.
supportive missus, which is like, okay, she was a really powerful
I
character in the
Yeah.
first film.
I
She's
will
like
say this
incredibly
is
powerful character in the first film.
probably my least favorite of the three, which I
Yeah.
don't think that's that
Oh,
I think it's considered to probably be the weakest of the 3.
I think it's the prettiest, but it's like story-wise, it
Yeah.
struggles because you
Um,
half your character
mm,
only one of your characters out of the main 2 can talk.
yeah. I think this film sort of I remember finding it trying to do a lot of emotional moments, and these films are very good at the emotional beats and hitting those beats. It just sort of doesn't work as well. Like I
Yeah,
don't know what it is exactly, but they just weren't able to make it work. It is interesting that they weren't able to make it work as well because they've done it before, and I assume there's a lot of the same people making this one. So I do just sort of find that interesting. Yeah, it is sort of the weakest one. I wasn't that blown away by the villain. I remember a lot of people going on about how great the villain was, and I didn't get it when I saw like he wasn't a bad villain. He was just sort of okay. And it was just
yeah.
sort of like, I don't really get what's so outstanding about this character. But I think it's very easily the worst of the three. But it's certainly not a bad film. Like, the animation, as expected, is phenomenal. Like, it is truly outstanding animation. Like, DreamWorks,
Gorgeous.
they're very good at animation.
Yeah, no, they do what they like, and I think that's the same argument that we had for Kung Fu Panda 3. I think it's like it's gorgeous. It's definitely the most pretty. It's not to say that it falls short in sort of certain narrative aspects. And I think we're sort of getting to when did this film come out? Was it 2017?
2019, I think.
19? So 9 years
Yeah,
after the first one, giving one film every 3 years, give or take. Well, not even
yeah.
2010. It's one film
2010.
every. So 4 years later, we would have got 3
So
or 4 years later, we
the
would have got.
second one came out 2014. So there was like 5
Yep.
years between this one and
Which I'm not blaming them because it's a phenomenal looking film. I'm not saying it's too long, but I mean, we'd already heard bad things about TJ Miller by this point. The IP
oh
was
yeah,
getting
they had
slightly
to
tired.
they had to recast his role because he had called in a fake bomb threat and had some unsavory allegations made against him. So like, yeah, we probably can't bring him back for this. It's like, yeah, it's perfectly adequate. It's kind of like, it's a very typical, just standard film. Like, it's perfectly
Yeah.
fine, but it's also not something I'm ever gonna really think about again. I appreciate that they gave it an ending, and I really like the idea of Hiccups, him and like he has to say goodbye to Toothless. I think that's a really nice, poignant moment to be like, yeah, to say goodbye to this character. I think is it's a very mature theme for essentially a kids, like it's not, I don't want to say it's just a kids film, but it is aimed at kids to a degree. Like it is for kids in some aspect. And I think it's a very mature sort of film, sort of for that demographic, which I think works really well. But I mean, I give it a 6. It's perfectly okay, but I was not that blown by it. And
Yeah,
it's
it's a 6.5
definitely it's
for me.
the weakest of the three for me, definitely.
I don't disagree. I do agree that it is pretty weak. I think it ties everything up in a nice little bow, but it doesn't say much. How to Train Your Dragon can say things, so for me it's a 6.5
Mm.
because it can and
Mm.
it should be, but it's not.
We're tying this into the release of the live action remake, which is out this week. Which is, I haven't really seen the marketing for this film or the trailers or anything. It probably won't be good though,
No, it probably
uh,
won't.
because I mean, I saw this Lilo and Stitch remake, and I mean, it wasn't a bad film or anything. It was just like a very pointless, like, why? What are we doing here, guys? Like, this is just what the fuck? Sorry, I'm just looking here. Reviews have come out for this How to Train Your Dragon remake. Currently got a 2% rating on Rotten Tomatoes with 51 reviews. So that's like actually pretty decent early reviews. Like that's not too bad for like early reviews. Like it's which is interesting, but it's got an 8.2 on IMDb currently, which is also very good, with nearly 3,000 ratings. Like, that's insane. Like, genuinely, I am surprised at these positive words so far, because I wasn't expecting that.
Like, I get it. I really liked it, but I just don't think that it's doing enough, or it's doing what it should be doing. And then that's sort of my argument with that. I think that it should be more. It's not living up to a potential, but that's not to say it's bad. I think, again, I mentioned before, I quite like it.
And they've greenlit a sequel, which I assume will just be a remake of the second one. Like, they're already planning ahead for a franchise. Like, they're really quite confident in these they're really quite confident in this first film that they're doing. They've announced a sequel to be released in 2027, so they're really, working ahead. And
these live action films, like, I just fuck off. Like, it is my biggest. It's just like, okay, all right.
I would prefer if studios made original shit. Like, don't get me wrong, I like, I'm a fan of the MCU, so I might sound like a bit of a hypocrite by saying I want original stuff from studios. But I'm even, it's just sort of like I am I don't know. I don't like this has sort of become very common because these films are gonna make a lot of money, which is the problem. Like, and so this is just gonna be like this Lilo and Stitch remake. Last I checked, was doing insanely well box office wise and money wise. It made $772.5 million on a $100 million budget. So it really made back its budget, which is just like, after Snow White bombed and did horrendously poorly, Lilo and Stitch made shitloads for them, so now they're gonna they're gonna keep doing them, which is, I don't like this. I think the difference is that there's something more inherently artless about doing live action remakes, as opposed to just adapting a different medium, if that makes sense.
Well, because it's not even like an adaptation. It's just like, hey, I don't know. It feels weak. It feels lazy. It's like the television series, and not to have a go at The Last of Us. I know it's incredibly popular, but it's like TV series that are just based off video games. It's cool. I played the game. I know the story. I get, if you've read the book, you know the story, and that's not me having a go at book adaptations, because you're bringing something that wasn't seen from a visual medium to a visual medium. Yeah. I don't know. It's disappointing, especially from DreamWorks, but I guess that's Illumination. I hope that's Illumination.
Yeah, because they're owned by Illumination now, aren't they? Or they're like sold. Yeah, I don't like that. That's not good.
So that's why we have Shrek that looks dumb. Is that How to Train Your Dragon all wrapped up in a nice little bow?
I think so.
Because I'll be honest, I'm not going. I probably am going to go see it in cinemas, but that's only because, like, it's going to be with friends and it's like something to do.
Yeah, my mum wants to see it, so I might go see it with her. Yeah. Well, I think that's pretty much it, unless you've got any sort of final things you want to add.
Not once did it actually tell me how to train a dragon. No, that's my only argument.
Yeah, it's like a fucking self-help book, but it doesn't actually teach you anything.
This was built off the craze of How I Met Your Mother. That's what this is.
But yeah, anyway, thank you, Harry, for joining me for this week.
Thank you for having me. I love a good How to Train Your Dragon. I love a good DreamWorks. You know that.
Yeah, we need to. At some point, I'm gonna have to do Shrek and Puss in Boots. But yeah, anyway, thank you, Harry, for joining me. If you want to hear us talking about other DreamWorks, we did Kung Fu Panda last year, so give that a listen because I think we were both very complimentary about Kung Fu Panda. It's only the first one I remember. I hope you've all enjoyed listening, and I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye.